now, please welcome Mr. Paul Bush, the director of the 5-Minute Museum. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Paul, with the 5-Minute Museum, I had the feeling you've made the part 2 of While Darwin Sleeps.
Is that a criticism? I mean,
no.
I only say that because when I was when I made furniture poetry about 18 years ago, I thought I wouldn't revisit that concept, and then I made While Darwin Sleeps. And then I thought I wouldn't revisit that concept. And then, you know, I've gone to another museum and filmed objects there. And so I'm from my own sensitivity. You've hit a nerve. That's what you say.
Just to make sure about the meaning of my assertion, you know, Godfather Part 2 was better than Part 1. So
okay. Well, we filmmakers are sensitive ourselves, and we never like our films compared favourably. We're very pleased to have our films compared favourably to other people, but we never like our films compared favourably to our own work.
Okay, so
because it works both ways,
it's
you know.
catch-22. There's nothing I can say.
No, you've made a bad start. But, it can only go downhill from now.
Yeah. So. Let's try something else. Yeah. How curators in museum receive a proposal from a filmmaker who wants to make a pixelated film with thousands of artifacts?
Well, I mean, that's really interesting because one of the things I was thinking of, just to sidetrack slightly from what you say, because I teach, we're always trying to get students to make films, like a graduation film in 1 year, you know, almost from nothing. And with this film, I was thinking about it for 5 years. I'd approached museums. I'd actually applied for artists in residency at museums in the UK to do exactly this thing with their collection, which was to make like a kind of, you know, little weird museum film that at the same time was a history of man-made objects. And yeah, I never got it. They weren't interested. And it's only very recently that because I work a lot in Switzerland, that I approached a Swiss museum, which is very near where I made the insect film, and they'd been helpful. And they straight away said, yes, you can shoot our collection. And suddenly I had the possibility of shooting all these beautiful objects, you know, and playing around with them. So it was over a long period, and I think people, especially younger people working films, forget that it takes so long not to make a film, but for an idea to go from the first stages. Even a very simple idea like this, you know, really took 5 years from the concept to actually being able to make it.
And I would say, technically, how do you do this? Do you have like 2 people who manipulate with white gloves the artifacts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have been left alone in the museum, you know, at night, all the cases unlocked.
Oh,
but it didn't happen that way. No, there were people with white gloves, you know. But I did some in English museums and some in Swiss museums. But I would say the Swiss museums had more time to be helpful, let's say, and they were more enthusiastic about the project. And I had men in white gloves, men and women in white gloves. But we did play around a bit, especially with some of the more seductive things that animators don't often get hold of a whole load of guns, you know, real guns. And they even had real ammunition in the museum for some reason. So
you've told that you're a teacher too, and it looks like it's a very good period for the school where you teach in London. This is one of your students who earned the Crystal for Best Student Film last year.
Yeah.
And
Can I tell a quick story about her?
Yeah.
Because I hope she isn't here, and I hope no one here who knows her is. But Daisy, I mean, to her credit, she was a student. She won everything with her film, The Bigger Picture. But to her credit, she probably had the less input from anyone in the course. She's very resistant to being taught. And now she's making another film. And she just wrote to me and said, "Oh, would you look at the animatic, Paul?" And I was thinking, so you don't listen to what I say again? But I didn't say that. I was flattered, but it's so funny that you had a student who will never listen to you when they're... And now she's asking advice. But the school is... the school's done really well. But
do you feel pressure from your students when you're a filmmaker yourself? Let's say you're famous. Okay, you're a famous filmmaker by yourself. You have very good students who earn awards all over the world. Do you feel pressure from your students, or a sort of emulation from them?
I think every teacher will agree that the most rewarding aspect of teaching is for your students not only to be good, because it's really interesting, but actually to be better than you. Although it's kind of annoying. I know what you're saying. It isn't. I mean, I've been beaten so many times by students, even students' films. You know, I mean, when I say beaten, it's not really a competition, but, you know, in terms of prizes, that it's not a big problem for me. But, you know, in fact, it's a pleasure that they win things.
Any question from the people in the room for Paul Bush?
Hi. The film reminded me of times when you get into a museum and only to find that the closing time is a lot quicker than you expected, and or you only have a few minutes in which to see the museum. How do you explain to the museums that you're going to work with that there won't be sufficient time to like explore any of the riches of the artifacts that you're filming?
Yeah, I mean, yes, thanks for the question, because one of the things I wanted the film to feel like was what the experience of being in a museum in some kind of way. You know, particularly these museums that have incomplete collections, because every museum, you know, by definition, well, not by definition, maybe, but by the nature of collections, always has an incomplete collection. So I wanted the experience of looking at my film like an experience of wandering through a museum. You see a bit of that, a bit of, you know, suddenly there's a gap. You know, there's no, you know, there's nothing between a certain period, and then there's thousands of something else. And sometimes you dream a bit about what might happen, and then sometimes you walk through. Sometimes it's a little bit funny, sometimes it's strange. So my film wasn't meant to be a serious examination of man-made objects. It was meant to be a kind of, you know, to see the humor of it and the strangeness of museums. And but in terms of the curators' reactions, they were very positive about the finished film. But I agree, it was a bit of a kind of paradox, because I think even though there's Swiss people in the audience, they probably would all agree with me that there's a certain seriousness about people in the position of museum curators in Switzerland. You know, slightly bureaucratic. I mean, I think it's probably true in most museums, a kind of bureaucratic seriousness about their work. And at the same time, it seemed like there's this playful side as well, and they really enjoyed me making fun of their collections. And so it was kind of curious. But I did, when I saw the size of the collection in the Bern, the museum in Bern, the History Museum in Bern, I made a suggestion to the director, because there are literally thousands and thousands, and I mean hundreds of thousands of artifacts, that instead of keeping them all in a museum, what they should do is they should give each one, just one citizen of Bern should possess one thing in the museum. And then if people wanted to see more, they could visit their friends. Because honestly, there was enough, no, seriously, there were enough coins there, enough Roman coins for everyone, probably in the whole of Switzerland, to have one. And, but they didn't like this suggestion. So.
Hi, this might be a boring question, but I'm curious. Do you do much post-production? Do you edit your film after? Do you do any kind of correction, reordering to find the best flow of movement, or is it really pre-planned?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think with the work I do, I mean, it's somewhat different from most animation, where although people are kind of, animators are making up the shot, you know, in other words, they're doing every drawing to make a shot, and then the shots are going together to make sequences, and those are making stories. With me, the shots themselves are made up of completely different images. So you can say in a way with my films that every single shot in the film is just one frame long. So I am beginning to work, you know, really, the work begins by having, you know, 100 photographs, similar images, or with the objects in front of me sometimes. Sometimes the film's partially kind of pixelated in real space. In other words, the objects are moved in front of the camera, and it's partly animated photographs. So I take the photograph of flat things and I arrange them later. So it really starts by working at a very small level, looking sometimes at little, just a second, just 24 frames of certain objects and seeing what they look like. So it really, you know, all the processes that you expect in any film in terms of structure take place. But below that, at the smallest point, the structure's happening when you're literally putting two frames together, and then 5, and then 20, and seeing if that has an interesting, you know, whether that's interesting, basically, whether it looks interesting or exciting. And that's often very surprising, even though I seem to have been doing this work a long time. It's surprising what you can do when you put two different frames together, slightly different.
Paul Bush, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mm.